And I guess I better record this. There we go. Okay, now I got the recording on. So for those of you who are brand new, there's two different parts of the Edge presentation. You can gear it towards an individual, or you can set it as a marketing proposal. And the difference between these two sometimes comes under a little confusion. When you choose individual, it's going to be exactly what you think it is. It's going to show a first and last name on the presentation. It's going to show contact information. But if you do choose to make it a marketing presentation, all it does is it eliminates borrower specific information. So it's going to lop off things like the middle and last name. So it'll show you a report headline instead of a borrower name. Now, this is particularly effective for when you want to post these on your website, when you want to post it to social media. Maybe you're doing a case study where it's non-specific borrower information. These are great to be able to just push out with very little sensitive data on it. So if you're looking to put out a marketing presentation that talks about maybe the cost of waiting, or maybe you're putting out a first-time home buyer report for rent versus own, the best way to do these is definitely going to be marketing. So it lops off any property address information over in the contact area, and of course any borrower information. So for today's discussion, I'm just going to kind of rip through and get over to the product so we can discuss cash to close. So we'll call this one, we'll just do it 30 fixed and a 20% down. And we'll say that this is a $400,000 property. And for those of you who like to use keystrokes instead of using the mouse to move around in the wizard, you can use the tab key to tab around between different fields in the wizard. One thing to bring to your attention is if you're like me and you like to use tab for everything, when you tab onto one of these buttons, so for instance, if I hit tab right now, I'm on the down payment field. If I hit tab, it's going to take me over to this button, and you can see it's now highlighted. If I just want to use my keyboard instead of using my mouse, all I have to do is when I'm on that button, hit the space bar, and that initiates the button. So it's just like tapping on it. Then I'll hit the tab key again, and I can now get over to the down payment field. So just a quick little tip there for those of you who think it's a little bit faster to use a keyboard. I'm that way, so I figured you guys might want to know about it. And of course, for those of you who are brand new term, this is in months, so make sure to enter it in months. If you enter it in years, you're going to get this really high payment that's not going to make a whole lot of sense. So that would be the first thing to isolate. Now, we know that right now, if we did nothing else on this 30 fixed, 20% down, our cash to close is going to be $80,000. It's just a down payment on this property. Now, on a purchase, cash to close is pretty easy because it's just down payment plus any closing costs that are not financed into the loan. And most times on a purchase, you're not going to finance things into the loan, specifically because you got to meet your LTV guidelines. So if we're looking at this right now, we've got an $80,000 cash to close. So we can assume when we get to our closing costs that any costs that we put in at this point will be called for at close. So let's say we chose a template, and I'll do my conventional purchase template. And if we look at this, we can see that the borrower paid items are $56.39. And seller is actually covering $310, and that was just, looks like probably the owner's title. Yeah, owner's title, so there we go. And notice that it is earmarked as seller, so that's not indicated as a borrower cost. So only the borrower costs would be asked for at close. So at this point, we should see a cash to close of $85,639. So I'm going to go ahead and apply to the loan. And I'll hit the save key. And I'm actually just going to go ahead and generate a preview of the presentation so we can take a look at it. And you can see our cash to close here, $85,639. So that's $80,000 for the down payment and $56.39 for our closing costs. So that part makes sense. Now let's talk about what happens if you need to use a contribution. Now when you're inside your closing cost detail here, if you've already earmarked itemized fees, you'll notice that these fields get grayed out. So APR closing costs, prepaid, non-APRs, and contributions, these are all populated by what's inside your detail. So if you need to edit these, you would need to go back inside the detail and edit the specific line items. Now there are two ways to do a contribution. One of them is you can hit add fee, and then you can select contribution. You just type a C after you've selected the drop down here, and it'll take you straight over to the C's in the list. And there's one in here called contribution. Now this is the only fee in the entire list that actually has logic built into it. So it knows that when you select this fee, whatever dollar amount you put in here is going to be a contribution against the closing cost. So it'll actually knock down the cash to close by the amount you put in here. So let's try it out. let's put in $2,000. And we'll earmark it as lender paid. You can see our lender paid items have now increased. We still have our seller paid items at $310 for our owner's title, but we've got a $2,000 lender credit. Now, if we hit apply to loan, remember our cash to close from before was $85,639. When we apply this to the loan and hit our right arrow here to trigger a save, if we jump back over to our analysis, we're going to see this $85,639. It's going to get reduced by $2,000. So there it goes. Now it's $83,639. So we know that our contribution happened correctly, and we can actually go into the closing cost detail and see it. We can see not only the $2,000 that the lender contributed, but the $310 that the seller is covering for owner's title. And if we go into the detail, we can actually see that a little bit better. So there's our seller paid fee, and then we have our contribution, which is our lender contribution right here. And you can see it has reduced our borrower paid fees by the $2,000, so we've got still the $36.39. And then that added to our down payment gives us our cash to close. So pretty straightforward there. Now, one of the things people run into quite often, and we get a lot of requests to the support desk, is they will go in and instead of using this contribution line item, they'll try and do it a little bit differently, and they'll add a custom fee, and they'll call it something like lender contribution. Now, anytime you add a custom fee, there's no logic behind it. This is specifically just a fee. So it's not going to know that it needs to subtract this from the cash to close just because of what you call it. I mean, you could call this A, B, C, D, E, and it would do exactly the same thing. So just keep this in mind. It's not going to be smart enough to understand your nomenclature for the fee itself. It's a very flat calculation, whereas fees are attributed to a borrower, a seller, a lender, or a broker. So if we're going to enter a new custom loan fee, just because we want to call it lender contribution instead of just contribution, or maybe we want to call it lender credit, and that's fine too. If we're going to do that, you can see it does appear in our list here, but if we enter a positive figure here, this is just going to be a borrower paid fee. It's going to ask the borrower to pay more. So if we put our $2,000 in there and just leave it as is, look at the borrower paid fees. It's now $76.39. So this lender credit is not doing what we expect it to. Now, if we made it a lender fee, it's still not doing what we expect it to. All it's saying is that this particular fee, because remember, Edge doesn't know what this means. It just knows that you've entered a fee. It's a $2,000 fee and the lender's going to cover it. It doesn't knock down our cash to close. You can see our borrower paid fees are still $56.39. So if you want to enter a custom contribution like this and you want to name it the way you want to name it, that's okay. Just there's one thing you got to do. Because it doesn't know that this fee is supposed to be a contribution, you need to turn it into one. And to do that, you do a negative amount and leave it as borrower paid. And you can see when we look at our total borrower paid now, we're back down to $36.39. So this is exactly the same as if we were to just choose the contribution line out of this drop-down box and enter a positive figure. Again, that's the one that has logic. When you create your own, it's not going to have any logic. So you've got to program the logic in by telling it the borrower is no longer responsible for this amount. So minus $2,000 to the borrower will actually reduce the borrower paid fees. Now, one thing to keep in mind when you're doing credits contributions is you need to earmark what it's going against. Now, right now, we have a significant amount of fees. We have APR fees and non-APR fees. Now, if this credit is supposed to go against APR fees, we'd want to earmark the APR box. If it's not supposed to go against the APR, meaning we don't want it to reduce our APR by this credit, we would leave this box unchecked. And that's just going to, the only thing it's going to change is when we go into apply to loan, you can see that our APR costs now are significantly lower. They're lower by $2,000. That means our APR is going to get dropped a little bit because of that contribution. Now, if we were to go in and untick that box and hit apply to loan, you can see instead of reducing the APR costs, it's now reduced the non-APR costs. You can see that's now down to $89. And oftentimes you will see this come across as a negative number. That's okay. If your credit exceeds the non-APR costs, you're just going to see a negative in there. And there's nothing wrong with it. It's going to make your cash to close correct. And the one thing that you will need to know is how to talk about that with your borrower. So let's increase that contribution a little bit so it goes negative. So let's try negative 3,000. And you can see now my non-APR costs are actually below, so it's gone negative here. And if we were to hit the right arrow and jump over to our analysis screen, we're going to see that this is going to reduce by 1,000 in just a second here. There it goes. And if we were to look at the more info section and go into the closing costs, we're still going to see that negative 911. So you need to know how to explain this to your borrower. Just basically you're telling them, look, it's a contribution that we've applied and it's actually more than what the non-APR costs are. It's still knocking down your cash to close. You can see we've got the right figure down here at the bottom. But just there's going to be some confusion around this point here. Why are my non-APR costs negative? Well, it's because we've given you a credit that actually exceeds what your non-APR costs are. So it's continuing to knock down the cash to close, but we're going to produce the appropriate APR for you. All right, so let's talk about what happens when you're doing a refi. So we'll go back, and I'm going to just change this one to refi analysis. And then instead of the purchase goal, because anytime you check this, it's going to remove the prompts that ask you for current mortgage data. Instead of the purchase goal, I'm going to uncheck that one, and I'm going to choose any other one. Maybe it's lower interest rate. If I want to tap into my equity, this is actually going to produce a cash out refi. So let's say $30,000. What this is going to do is after I enter my current mortgage information, it's going to know what the payoff is for my current mortgage, and then my new loans, when I trigger the refi switch, it's actually going to pad those new loans by the amount I put in right here, this $30,000. So if you've done this before and you're kind of wondering why did my loan amount increase, that's what it is. This one has logic in it that knows that if you earmark a specific amount to tap into the equity, it's going to try and get that out of the new refinance for you. So I'll show you what that looks like in just a second here. Let's put in our property value. And I'll put in some basic details on a current mortgage. Let's say I took it out a couple of years ago. And notice when I go through these, as I'm continuing to tab, the remaining balance updates for me. And the reason is this is just updating it based on the amortization schedule that's calculated off of this information. So we know that they've been in this loan for 2 years. And if we assume they've made the regular amortized payments, their remaining balance at this point would be this figure. Now, if they've made additional payments, that's okay. You just want to make sure and update the remaining balance so that it shows what you expect it to show. Maybe you've got a payoff demand and you can see that it's actually only 190 because they've made a couple additional principal payments. That's okay. When you do that, all it's going to do is edge recalculates the amortization schedule and produces a new freedom point based on this figure instead of the one that's in the amortization. So good news, instead of exactly 28 years, we're going to have just short of that. We're going to probably have 27 and some change. So let's trigger the save, and then we'll jump back over to our analysis, and we'll wait for this current one to populate, and we should see a freedom point coming in here. There we go. So you can see our freedom point is 26.83 years instead of 28 years. That's because we used a reduced amount for our loan amount. We've assumed they've made additional principal payments. Now we can also, if you know your borrower has been making principal payments, extra principal payments, and you want to show them what would happen if they continued to do that, you can do it. You can do it in the reinvestment grid. So I'll show you that in just a couple of minutes here. But let's fill out our refinance transaction. So I've got my basics in for my current mortgage. That's going to be my remaining balance and, in fact, my payoff. When I go over to my new products, and let's just call this one rate and term refi. When I switch the refi switch to yes, it's automatically going to bring in my base loan amount for me. So if I go back to my assumptions section here, and actually because I did this a little bit backwards, I'm going to start a brand new client, because this one was based on my initial data entry for purchasing. So we'll do the tap into my equity. And actually the other one probably worked too. Just might have needed to tab back and forth a couple of times. Now we have a payoff of 186 here. When we toggle our refi switch, you can see it brings in 216,967. Now, why is it bringing that in instead of the 186? Well, we told it that we want to get $30,000 cash out. So it's automatically padded this new loan amount to incorporate that $30,000 cash out. So if we were to just prepare it at this point and go and take a look at our analysis, we'll see in just a moment, once this updates, we should see fairly, we're pretty close to $30,000 cash out. Now, the reason it's not exactly $30,000, and actually let's Let's prepare a new preview because I think that was the preview of the last presentation. There we go. So now we've got exactly $30,000. That was the amount that we told Edge we wanted to take out of the equity. And you can see our current loan amount, $186,967. Our new loan amount, $216,967. That's exactly $30,000 apart. So Edge did the lifting for us. We didn't have to pad the loan amount on our own. And it's showing our cash out of 30. Now, a very common question is when they come into the products, you notice I don't have any closing costs in here. So my cash out is exactly 30. However, if I include my closing costs, which I should, let's do one of my refis. Well, that's an FHA. Let's try a regular one. There we go. When I do my fee template here, you can see that there's $881 in APR costs, $789 in non-APRs, and then as I go in and tick for my reserves, those automatically get calculated back in. And let's put in our figures here. And we'll see that our prepaid escrows now are showing $887. And the reason for that is I use those monthly multipliers. So our hazard insurance reserves are already in there. And then if I look down towards the bottom, there's my tax reserves. Those are calculated by using the monthly multiplier that I used. Now note that this is now showing borrower paid fees of $25.58. So what this means is when we look at our cash to close, though we are expecting $30,000 out of that, it's going to pull these fees out of the cash out because it's going to try and settle. So when we go forward, we're going to see that instead of that $30,000, we're going to have a cash out that's a little bit different. So this will change in just a second here, and it'll incorporate those fees. So if we were to take and look at our closing costs here, and you can see what we've got for closing costs. We've got about $1,500 there, maybe $2,400, $2,935 is our total cash out. And you can see it's reduced from the 30 grand cash out. It's reduced the amount by the amount of our fees. Gabriel has a question. It says, if possible, can you show us if a client is doing a combination of paying off debt and cashing out, please? Absolutely. That's a great question. Thank you, Gabriel. So let's go back into Edge. And the good thing is with this one, they've got plenty of equity. So they've got a $300,000 purchase price. Their original loan was only $200. The remaining balance is $186. So they've actually got like $114,000 worth of equity here. So we can do a cash out. And let me go back to my goals, and I'm just going to eliminate the tap into my equity here just so we can see what this does without doing that. I'll flip the refi switch, and you can see that this one is going to be rate and term refi. And this automatically brought in my existing loan balance as my payoff amount. So this is my new loan amount. Right now, if I had no fees on this one, this would be a zero cash out, zero cash to close. Now, because I do have fees on this one, and check out my LTV, I'm at 62.97. I do have fees on this one, but I have some room to pad this. So you can see that on a refi transaction, I've actually checked the box for all of them to add these into the loan amount. So I'll do that, add all fees to the loan. This actually increases the amount financed by the amount of the fees. So at this point, once I hit apply to loan, I've now got a loan amount that's enough to cover the fees and enough to pay off the note. So if we take a look at our preview in a second here, we should see this zero out, this cash to close. Should be a dead on even pay. So wait for just a second for that to update. There it goes. So you can see our current loan, $186,967. Our rate and term refi, where we've got all the fees financed in, our loan amount is a little higher because we're financing in the fees, but our cash out, cash due is zero. So this is a dead even rate and term refi. Now, obviously, you can still do a rate and term, kind of a limited cash out if you're less than $2,000 for your cash out. So don't worry about getting it dead on zero if you're looking to make guidelines. You will get a little bit better rate if you're closer to zero. So the closer you get to 2,000, you're going to be triggering a red flag with the underwriter. So just be careful with that. But to answer more on what Gabriel's question was, he's asking if we're doing a combination of paying off debt and cashing out, how would we show that? So when Edge shows your cash to close, or this cash out right here, this is a little bit different than what you see on your underwriting guidelines. This is literally what money is either due or payable at the closing table. So this is not necessarily earmarking exactly how much cash out they would have, because their cash out might be 30 grand, but because you're using part of that to pay for the fees, the cash out in Edge might show something like 27. Realistically, they're taking 30 grand cash out because they're 30 grand above their current equity. However, when we're talking about cash out, we're really just talking about the monetary transaction at close. So let's take a look at what would happen if we needed to pay off a debt. So we'll call this one debt payoff. And what we're going to do is, you notice I left my base loan amount exactly the same. So right now, this is just enough to pay off the existing note that I entered in the assumption section. But if I need to pay off some debt, the easiest way to do it is put it in the closing cost detail and then finance it in. So if we go down here and add a custom fee, and you only need to do this once, by the way, to add a custom fee. Once you add a custom fee, it's going to be in your drop-down list from there going forward. So if I call something like debt payoff, now anytime you're doing debt payoff here, make sure to default this as a prepaid escrow. I know it doesn't sound like it makes sense, but the reason for it is very important. So I'm going to leave it unticked for right now, because I'm going to show you what it does if we just do a debt payoff. Let's say they've got $15,000 in debt that they want to pay off. I'm going to finance that into the loan. Hit apply to the loan. And you can see now our non-APR costs have increased. When we hit the right arrow and jump over to our analysis screen, we're going to see that because we finance that in, our cash out doesn't change. Technically, we're taking 15 grand cash out, maybe more actually, because of the costs we're financing in. But our transaction at close is zero cash due, zero cash to close. So if we go into our more info section here, we can see that our non-APR costs are pretty high. When we look at our fee detail, it is showing our $15,000 debt payoff. The problem with this is that it's earmarking it as a closing cost. Excuse me for 1 second, guys. My phone is ringing. Okay, my apologies. That is a cardinal mistake, by the way. If you're ever recording video when you're doing your Edge presentations, turn off your phone. Obviously, you heard it from me. There is, it can be very distracting when you're trying to record a video or produce a presentation like we're doing here. But when you're doing your Edge videos, I would tell you a couple of things on that. One, obviously try and turn off everything you can when you're doing that so you don't get interrupted. But if something does happen, you get interrupted, somebody walks behind you or something like that, don't worry about it. It's okay. You're not expected to be a videographer. I mean, you're the person that's giving them mortgage advice. So if something goes wrong in the video, don't worry about it. Don't retake it 10,000 times to try and get it perfect. It doesn't matter. The real crux of producing a video on these presentations is to introduce yourself to the client, to get that personal feel. So little hiccups here and there, don't sweat it. It's not a big deal. In fact, it's going to endear you to the customer. All right, so let's get back to our conversation. Now, we were talking about debt payoff, and I said that there's a little problem with the way we did it here. The way that we earmarked this fee, because we just did it as a non-APR cost, we're going to find that this $15,000 is now represented in our savings over 60 months. Now check it out. Our current mortgage is saving $11,000 over 60 months. How can that possibly be? We're going from 5% to 4%. We're going at a little bit higher mortgage, but it shouldn't be that much interest difference in our 60-month period. So what's happening to produce this? If we go into our more info section and we take a look at it, our closing in points are $16,000. This is obviously not correct because part of that 16.6 is $15,000 going to debt payoff. So what do we need to do to fix this? Anytime you're doing a debt payoff, you're entering a line item for debt payoff, always make it a prepaid escrow. And you'll see when we go down, well, that's kind of cool. I'm not getting anything in those. Let's regenerate that. Well, my debt payoff is down here, this $15,000. I must be running into something because of GoToMeeting. But the key to this is always mark the prepaid escrow box. Oh, there we go. They populated. When you're doing a debt payoff, earmark this as a prepaid escrow. When you do that and hit apply to loan, we're going to see that in our mortgage coach analysis, we're going to see this jump pretty significantly here. And there we go. It just jumped over to the other side. The reason is prepaid escrows are not considered a closing cost in our system. So anytime you're doing a debt payoff, always earmark it as a prepaid escrow so it doesn't skew your short-term savings. Now remember, the short-term savings is not the monthly savings multiplied by 60. This is a totally different comparison. In fact, what it is it's taking the total interest in MI paid, it's adding the closing in points to get a total cost for this period of time. It does that for both loans. There's my 39 plus my 1671 for close. My total is 4719. So that's where I'm getting this 3664 savings. Make sure you understand this because this is going to be a very common question that your borrowers are going to ask you, but there's a very good answer for it. And that's the top right section. This is all cash flow. This is just showing you your monthly payment difference. But when we're looking at long-term impact of what these loans are doing, what we're really looking for is how much is it going to cost the customer in unrecoverable costs. They're paying principal in both situations. We're not taking principal into account because they're retaining this in the form of equity. So what are the real costs that they can't get back? The real costs are interest in MI and closing costs. So we add those figures together to give a total cost over that time, compare them against each other, and that's where we get our net savings. All right, so let's get back to Gabriel's question. What do we do if we're showing a combination of paying off debt and cashing out? So if we were going to do that right now, we've got this structured so it's just paying off debt. We've paid off $15,000 in debt, but what if we also want to cash some out? What we would do in that case is we would pad our loan amount by the amount we want to cash it out. So if I want an extra 10 grand on this, I'm going to put in 196. You can see my LTV has increased now to 71.51. I'm still paying off my debt in the form of the prepaid escrows. And if we go over to our analysis screen, you can see my cash out is now showing 10 grand. Now, technically, according to underwriting guidelines, this is 25 grand cash out. I'm paying off $15,000 in debt. But remember what I told you, this cash out here is really just what is in the borrower's hand or what does the borrower need to pay at the closing table. So while that $15,000 is being applied to their liability debt, this 10 grand is after that liability debt is already paid off. And you can see our total loan amount has increased pretty dramatically. We're going to now 214,525. But again, I have a kind of an ideal situation here where my borrower has just a bunch of equity. And oftentimes you're not going to have that opportunity. If they don't have that much equity and you're bound to LTV guidelines, you can always use something like this. Just do 20%. And this is actually going to be more than what I was doing before. But if you're bound to LTV guidelines, you want to make sure they stay at 80 so they don't get MI. And you want to cash them out for the max. This would be the max that I could cash out on this particular loan scenario. So you can see my max cash out here, 53,033. And that's actually plus the 15 grand that I'm paying off debts. So technically 68 would be my max cash out on this particular loan. And that would keep it at 80%. Now, certainly I could cash out more than that if I wanted to go higher in LTV, but you've got MI coming into play. Now your monthly payment's going to be a little bit higher. There's certainly other factors that come into play. And there will be cases where your borrower's going to want to do that. I'll pay the monthly MI because I need to do some home repairs. I need to do this. I don't have that much equity. So let's play with the equity a little bit. So what I'll do is I'm going to go back and I'm going to make this 250. And then we'll go into the products. We'll make this 250 as well. And we're still paying off the debt, but watch what happens to our cash to close here. So all I did was I reduced the property value here, and that in turn is going to reduce my loan amount. So you can see my loan amount here, 217,410. My cash out is 13,033, and that was because I took it to the absolute max of what I could get at the 20% mark. Now, some of you may be noticing this part right here. My LTV is 86.96. It's actually significantly higher than what it was. The reason is, in my closing cost detail, I've got everything financed in. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to clear those out and hit apply to loan. And then let's go and check out and see what it does. So now that I've cleared those out, now this is probably looking more like what you're used to seeing in your fee worksheets, where it's just a top to bottom calculation of how much do you start with, how much do you need to pay off, what fees are going to be pulled out of it, and where do you end up. So as the borrower here, I'm taking a $200,000 loan out. It's paying off $15,000 in debt, but I've also got closing costs. So you can see my cash to close now, $43.77. And this is literally cash due from the borrower. So this wouldn't make sense if we're doing a debt payoff. So obviously you got to make sure you have enough equity to do that debt payoff so that the borrower doesn't have to come in with cash. They'd obviously just put that into the credit card or whatever they're paying off if they had the money. So you want to structure these so that you stay within your LTV guidelines, but at the same time, offer the maximum amount according to your borrower's goals. Chris's question, how can we delete a line in the closing cost detail? Great question. So inside the closing cost detail, let's say we wanted to get rid of that debt payoff. I'm going to scroll down to where that's at. I'm just going to hit the trash can box next to it. Then I hit apply to loan and hit the right arrow. Now you can see my LTV is now back at perfect 80. We don't have to worry about that. And if we go back to our analysis screen, we're going to see that this cash to close is going to change here. Actually, it's going to be just a little different. So cash out now is showing 10.6. So that's the $15,000 difference, 10.6 versus about $4,000 cash due. That's our $15,000 difference that we just saw. So keep in mind, your cash to close, it's very dynamic. It is going to change if you make even the most minor changes to your closing costs, your payoff amounts. So just keep it in mind. If you come back in to update a presentation that you've done a while ago, and maybe the property values change. Maybe you pulled an AVM 3 months ago and it was 300,000, but you pull another one now and it's looking like 305. I mean, in a case like that, obviously the most recent appraisal would be the best thing. But if you're pitching this to a client before you've even done an appraisal, you're using AVMs, you're using a Zestimate, as much as I hate to say that, if you're using one of those. Certainly when things change, you're going to want to come in and update your edge presentations. And when you do update your edge presentations, as soon as you hit a right or left arrow in this wizard, it's going to update your live presentation. So if you've already sent a link out to your borrower and they've clicked on it, they're looking at it, or they click on it in the future, it's always going to show what you have in edge. So if I come in here and say, you know what, when I first started quoting this loan process 2 months ago, it was a 4% rate, but things have changed lately. I don't know if you guys have been watching Rate Watch, but if you're listening to Dan, you know that we're kind of trying to break out of a bubble right here, and it hasn't been going well. So let's say we came back into this presentation and it's now 4.25 instead of 4. As soon as we hit that right arrow, our analysis is going to update within a few seconds. Instead of 4%, it's going to show 4.25. Now, this is also going to update on the borrower's side. So this should be lighting up some bulbs for you. When you guys are talking to your borrowers and they're looking at your presentation, you can make updates in real time. They don't have to re-click the link, whether it's on their mobile device or in the browser. It's going to update for them. Now, when you update something inside Edge, like I just did, where it's a rate or part of the loan itself, anytime you have to update in here, it takes 2 to 3 seconds after you hit a save button here for it to update your live analysis. Now, conversely, there is another feature in here that allows you to do things like highlight and pop out details almost in real time. And that is Edge Live. So Edge Live produces just a preview of the presentation like we were just looking at. The difference between this version and what you send to your borrower is that you have the ability to highlight. So when you choose to highlight something, and let me see if I can break this apart for you here. Go and grab that link. And then I'm going to populate this into a new tab. Let's yank this out real quick. Oops. And then I'm going to try and reduce my screen here so you can see both of them. Okay, there we go. So the left side of the screen, this is me as the originator. I've gone through the Edge presentation. I've got my borrower on the phone. I've hit the generate link and I sent them this link. I went ahead and texted it to him. I emailed it to him. However I got it to him, I sent him this link. Now, the right side of the screen here, this is the borrower. Borrower has clicked my link. So I'm just pasting that link in there and hitting enter. Now, the borrower is looking at this. They have to hit I understand on my disclosures, and then they're going to see that presentation. You know, they don't have the ability to highlight. I mean, they can certainly select things, but it's not going to highlight and leave it highlighted. You have that ability though. So when you're in your presentation, you've gotten your borrower on the phone, you're talking to them, you know they've clicked your link, and in fact, you've asked them, hey, are you looking at my presentation right now? Awesome. All right, let's go through it together. So here's what we've got. You're going to hit Edge Live, and you're going to get the exact same presentation they're looking at. The difference is you can drive it versus what they can do. So, Mr. Borrower, you know, as we talked about, your current mortgage, you know, it's got about $186,000, almost $187,000 left to pay. So I just highlighted that for you. You can see that just jumped on your screen there. You've got a 5% rate on that, and it looks like your payment is around $1,073. So you can see that that's moving for you. Now, your current freedom point, 25.92 years, and you'll see that highlight on your screen right now. Now, our new loan that we're talking about, and again, you'll get good at this because you can earmark the timing on when you need to do this, but try and time yourself about a second to a second and a half behind what you're expecting to see. So if I'm talking to my borrower, I'm saying, you know, Mr. Borrower, I've already showed you your current mortgage. You know, we have a new loan amount that I'm recommending that's $200,000. And you can see I've timed it perfectly so that highlight hit when I said $200,000. You know, I'm able to get you a rate of 4.25, and you can see that as a result, your payment's going to go up just a little bit. It's going to go up to $1,317, so it's going to be about an extra $244 for your monthly payment. Now, the great part about doing this information, and you'll see when I pop out this more info section here, is you're actually, when you look at our fee detail, you're going to see that here's all of our fees. We're covering everything for you. And if you want to go through this on your own time, feel free to click on these tabs. There's a reinvestment tab, there's a closing cost tab, and you have a payment breakdown tab that's going to show you all the differences in payment. Now, some of you might be noticing this here. I made one of the weird faux pas in that I did not make these apples to apples. My debt payoff one, it's showing taxes and insurance, whereas my current mortgage isn't. So that's why we're actually showing a savings. So at this point, if I'm on the line with my borrower and I've just realized I've made this mistake, I'm going to go back into Edge as quickly as I can. I'm going to go to my monthly fees and enter those fees as fast as possible. And then I'm going to hit my right arrow. And then as I'm talking to my borrower, I'm going to say, Mr. Borrower, okay, now we're looking at the right thing. You can see we're actually saving you $90 a month. And we're getting a little bit of cash out here. Your cash out is going to be about $10,000 or so, and you can use that towards your home repairs. We are saving you $90 a month, so I might actually I might recommend you reinvest this in some way. And you can see my mind is going now. I'm going back into my analysis screen. I'm going into the reinvestment strategy, and I'm going to show them what happens if they put that $90 straight back into principal. So as I'm continuing to talk to the borrower, I'm saying, Mr. Borrower, you're saving $90 a month here. But what I'm recommending is a reinvestment strategy. And if you look on your screen now, you should see the reinvestment strategy coming into view now. And I'm recommending you take that $90 and reinvest it straight back into your mortgage every month. And instead of your 25.92 freedom point, you're actually going to pay off your loan in 25 years instead of, or in 25.42. So we're syncing up your amortization schedule, and you're getting the 10 grand cash out. So now you can make your repairs, you can continue your regular monthly payment just as if nothing happened, and you're still going to pay it off about 6 months faster than you would have otherwise. So Mr. Borrower, is it time to do this mortgage? Let's get this done. I mean, you can see where this is going. It doesn't take a whole lot to learn how to drive these presentations, but once you understand how you can do it, it's going to be a game changer for you. Now, to take this a step further, hopefully some of you were able to attend our mobile mentality call yesterday. Yesterday's call was all about how to use your mobile device to do this kind of stuff. You are not tied to your browser. While you do have to create the initial presentation in your browser, everything after that you can do on your mobile device. And the reason we don't create it in the mobile device is, as you've seen when we go through the Edge Wizard, you know, there's a bunch of tabs, and every one of these tabs has multiple fields on it. You would be spending a year trying to create this on your phone. So instead of creating it on the phone, you create it in the browser. But once you have that link generated, this guy right here that you can send to your borrower, now you've got all kinds of options when it comes to mobile. So let me see if I can open up a I'll open up my iPad for you and show you what this looks like. Give me just a second, everybody. And I'm going to use a tool called Reflector so that I can show you my iPad. And almost there, guys. Hang tight with me for just a sec. Okay, so while that's coming up, now remember, I just showed you how to use Edge Live from the browser. So you can do things like highlight, and it's going to highlight on the borrower's end. You can pop out more info sections. It's going to pop out on the borrower's end. So this is all great stuff, very easy to use when you're in the browser, but you also have the same capability when you're in the mobile. So come on, it's not coming up. Sorry, guys. Sorry, this is such a pain. Yeah, let me try opening up a different reflector and see if I can get it for you. There we go. I think I've got it. Hey, all right, success. So there's my iPad. Sorry about the delay there, guys. So when you're on your iPad, you can actually go into your mortgage coach, and hopefully you've got this on your iPad. If you don't, shame on you. You need to download this. If you don't have it on your iPad or your phone, you need to understand what your consumer's experience is going to be like when they click on your link. So first and foremost, I would say send yourself one of your links. If you're brand new to using the software, just generate one of your links, even from a sample presentation. Send it to yourself via email so that you can open it up on your device. When you open it for the first time, it's actually going to prompt you to download and install the app, just like it would for your clients. So you should be aware of what that process looks like. Now, the difference you have on your mobile device versus what your clients can do, the clients can just basically see what your presentation is once they have this installed. You have some additional capability. This little silhouette up here in the top left allows you to log into the presentation. So you can see I've got my login credentials there. Once I hit sign in, I now have a totally new view. So I'm going to go to my clients here. And let's see, this one's just refi. So that's this guy right here. I'm going to go ahead and click on that. It's going to ask me what report do you want to use. I'm going to use the total cost that I did. Now, if I want to, I can actually record a video from my mobile device here. So when you're doing open houses specifically, this is awesome because you can kind of walk around the open house with a selfie stick or just holding it out, and you can get that 3D walkthrough kind of effect. Great stuff. Definitely give it a shot when you get the chance. But beyond that, if you just want to record a brief snippet of video to explain to your client what these options are, make sure your face is in front of them so that they, you're building that connection. You can do it either from the browser like I was showing you or from the mobile device. Now, what we were talking about is Edge Live, where you're driving the presentation. So just like I did in the mobile device or in the browser, I can do this in the mobile. So I'm just going to hit live reporting. And let me close out of the analysis I have going. So what we're looking at here is on the left side, we've got my iPad. On the right side, this is the borrower's version of the presentation. Now, when I'm on my iPad and I click on things, if I go into the summary section and then go to things like, say, the payment breakdown, now what's going to happen is you can see it pops open the payment breakdown in the browser version. So I'm mobile. I'm at a coffee shop talking to my client on the phone. I've got the app open and I'm saying the same exact thing. Mr. Borrower, you've got a current P&I payment of $1,073, and your new one, I'm going to reduce it to $983. So you're going to see that on your screen in just a moment here. Now, I have recommended a reinvestment strategy for you, and you can see that I've highlighted that. That's $90, and that's going to result in just about an even payoff as to what you're going right now on your amortization. The difference, of course, is going to be what your cash out is. And as we go to the closing costs, you'll see that you actually get cash out in the amount of $10,600 after your closing costs are already paid. So this is cash in your hand once the transaction is done. Now I can continue to navigate this presentation and move around the different areas between the payment breakdown. Maybe I want to just show them that, I've got everything in there. I've got their hazard insurance and taxes on both liens. Maybe I want to show them the difference in the total pity payment. It is going to go down a little bit. and then I want to show them that reduction payment that I earmarked, so that 90. Now you can see it's kind of magical. When you're in here, this is something that you can drive from anywhere. It used to be you could only do this inside the browser. So take advantage of this feature. It's really cool. It allows you to have that conversation with your client. In fact, most people when they are reporting really good success using this tool, they're talking on the phone with their client, and then they've got a mobile device on the side that they're using to do Edge Live and to really drive the presentation. And certainly, with most new phones today, you can do both at the same time. You can do a phone call and an app. So, feel free to, put it on speaker, hold it out in front of you, open the app, talk to your client as you're driving through this and start changing the screens and showing them what's going on. And, when you want to get back, you can, and matter of fact, there's another little item here, clear all. That'll allow you to clear all the highlighting on the presentation. So when you do that, it's going to clear it off yours and the borrower's. So now you can alter what you're talking about. Maybe the initial conversation was about closing costs, and now you want to talk about the short-term savings. So you're going to go into the more info section here, and you're going to isolate. Your short-term savings is just taking your total interest and MI paid, and then it's adding any closing in points, totaling those together for a total cost. Now we do that with your current mortgage as well. So the difference between those total costs over the 60-month period of time is where we're getting that 2669. So again, you're the wizard behind the curtain here. So, have at it. Try this with a couple of your colleagues first, just so you can understand exactly how this works. In fact, you may want to try it in the same fashion I'm doing right now, which is send a link to yourself, open it on your iPad, and open it in the browser here. But then on your iPad or on your tablet, whatever tablet you have, whatever phone you have, log into the Edge mobile app instead of just viewing it. And then try driving this presentation. And you're going to see that your browser is going to update just like mine is right here. So um, give it a shot. See how it likes you. I think you're going to be pleasantly surprised with what it can do for you. All right, I know that was a little long-winded. Hopefully that provided some value to you. But the other thing actually before I go here is remember I said you've got a couple of options on what you can do with this presentation once you log in. And when you click on clients and you click on the particular presentation, remember that I have the options here to view the presentation, obviously. I can do live reporting like I just showed you here, or I can record video. So if you don't have a webcam on your computer, or maybe you're working on a laptop that's on a dock and it's constantly shut, so the webcam is actually pointing at the keyboard, um, you don't have to be tied to your computer to do this. You can now do this from your mobile device. Now, I would always highly recommend anytime you're recording video, anytime you're doing these mobile presentations, get connected to Wi-Fi. You don't want to kill your data using this. It's not going to take a whole lot, but if you're doing them constantly, you are going to notice a difference if you're not using Wi-Fi. So get these connected to Wi-Fi before you do something like this. Now I'm going to choose video, and there we go. You can see there's me, guys. Hey, everybody. Nice to meet y'all. So you can see I'm doing this from my iPad, and I literally just hit the video button. Now when I want to start recording, all I'm going to do is hit this record button here with my finger, and it's going to start recording. You can see I've got a little flashing red light there at the top right corner, but it's recording my presentation. So as I'm talking to my borrower, it's recording not only my face, but my voice and everything. Once I'm done, I'm going to hit the stop button. Now I have the option to use the video, I can retake the video, or play it back. So I'm going to choose use video. And you'll see that in just a moment here, there we go. It says you can wait till the upload finishes before streaming to other devices. Then you hit done on that. Now it'll tell you once it's converted. I will tell you, it takes about 2 minutes when you upload a video into your Mortgage Coach app. Wait for at least 2 to 3 minutes before you send it to your borrower, because there's actually a conversion process it has to go through. When it uploads your video, it's uploading as an MP4 directly from your device. The problem is it needs to be actually 3 different file formats for it to play in all the different media that we offer. So what we do is as soon as you upload it, we start a conversion process and we convert it to 3 different formats so that it can be viewed on iOS, on Android, and in the browser. So make sure when you do this, give it a couple of minutes before you have your borrower click on the video, because it takes a minute to convert. But once it does, it's ready to roll, and it's there for them whether they click on it in the mobile or in the browser, wherever they'd like. Mark's question, real quick. He says, "Am I correct that I cannot alter anything on my mobile just using Edge Live? Just highlight. Is that correct?" Absolutely, Mark. So you hit it right on the head. All the alterations that you're going to do in the file would be inside the browser. That's where the data is actually stored. So when you're looking at the mobile app, we're not actually storing data here. Instead, we're just giving you a view of what that presentation looks like, and we're allowing you to manipulate how the presentation looks versus changing variables that comprise the presentation. So great question, Mark. I'm glad you brought that up because a lot of people don't realize that, and they think that, you know what, if I just go to Edge on my iPad, I should be able to edit this. This is not the case. And the reason is iPads do not support Flash. And all of our stuff is done in Flash here. So if you tried to actually go to the Edge wizard on your iPad, it's not going to work. It's not going to bring up the page correctly. Now, there is a workaround for it, and for those of you who kind of want to egghead out a bit on this and nerd with me, there's a couple of browsers out there that do support Flash plugins for your iPad. So if you did want to be able to edit this on your iPad, the browser I would recommend is called Puffin, Puffin. It is a Flash emulator, which means it's a new browser, just like you have Safari on your iPad or Chrome. This would be a new browser called Puffin. And when you initiate that, it can support Flash. So you can go to edge.mortgagecoach.com. You can create the entire presentation from your iPad through there. And I would tell you, there's a bunch of others out there. Some of them are a bit wonky, but Puffin does a pretty good job of it. It actually even gives you the ability to use your finger as a mouse. So there's some settings that will allow you to bring up a keyboard and bring up a mouse within the browser that other browsers wouldn't allow for. So that definitely a cool option. If you want to get into that, you actually want to create these presentations from the mobile device. You can do that using a Flash emulator like Puffin. Taffy's question, what about Android? And great question, Taffy. Android does support Flash. However, it does not support it in the browser, which is the weirdest thing I've ever heard. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense here, but the same thing would apply to Android. You'd have to actually install a Flash emulator. And what this boils down to is there's been an age-long fight between Adobe and and Apple, and Apple refused to support Flash, just flat out refused to support it. And what happened is, the Android guys, and there are certainly multiple platforms for Android. Obviously it's an open source platform versus a closed one like Apple. But those guys have been contacting Adobe saying, "Hey, we want to be able to support this. We can support Flash. Why won't you let this happen?" And Adobe basically kicked back and says, "We don't want Flash in any of the mobile devices if we can't have it in all of them." So between the three of those guys, the monopoly players here, it made it impossible for us to have Flash on our tablets and on our mobile devices. So with that said, people like Puffin and those other Flash emulators, they're a great workaround for that. Now, the whole reason we had to even design the mobile app was because we had to get around that Flash limitation. So your borrowers will never encounter a problem with this because they're going to run into the native app. They're going to be forced to download it if they want to view the presentation on their mobile device. Now, for you, if you'll have the same functionality. Obviously, you can download the mobile device. You can look at the presentation, record video. You can do Edge Live, but like Mark said, that's all you can do. So if you wanted to be able to do more, if you want to actually isolate the wizard and be able to edit data inside the wizard, get Puffin. Try it out. There's a free trial for it. I want to say it's 3 or 4 days, and then after that, it's like $3 to buy it. Totally worth it. So I would definitely recommend giving that a shot if you'd like to do everything on your iPad. David's question, what are the best options for a purchase scenario? So great question, David. Can you give me a little bit more information about what you're trying to accomplish here? Are you looking for best practices in terms of delivery? Are you looking best practices in terms of what types of programs to show? Or give me a little bit more there, and I'll certainly see if I can do. So when you meet new realtors. Oh, great question. All right, cool. Let's go into that avenue real quick here. So let's close this guy out. Now, what David brings up, he brings up a great point, is that Edge is not only for your borrowers. Now, the total cost analysis, this really is borrower driven. But remember I told you in the beginning you can make these marketing presentations? Well, that means that it doesn't have to be for the borrower. Now, everything in Edge, it's pretty free form, meaning you can edit whatever you want to look at, and the good part about this is you're not set to what we want to produce for you. So your total cost analysis can be any number of types of presentations. It can be things like purchase option comparisons where you're doing a couple of different purchase prices. It could be different loans against each other, FHA, conventional, maybe you've got different LTV points, equity points. It can be as simple as something like a cost of waiting. And, a cost of waiting presentation, it's really more of a marketing presentation, but it certainly could be developed at a borrower. But that, David, is one of the ones that I would definitely recommend showing to your realtor partners. So if I'm looking to build a case study for when I'm making a first contact with a realtor partner and I'm trying to deliver my value proposition on what I can offer, the reports I'm going to show them, there's going to be one thing I'm going to have the realtor do first. The first thing is I'm going to have them download and install the mobile app. They need to be able to show this to their clients when they're talking to them. But the best way to do that, send them a link. So I would go in and I would actually generate, some very basic sample presentations. Maybe I would call this one like cost of waiting. And then for friendly name, I would say something like do not edit realtor presentation. And the reason is just so I know if I come back in here, I'm not going to edit this guy, and this is just going to be specifically for realtors. So in a cost of waiting, this would be something like buy now. And let's say a $250,000 property, 20% down. We'll incorporate our purchase fees. Apply to loan. And then I'm going to add another product. And this one, you can do as many programs as you want. You can do up to 4 different products against each other on a purchase. And I'll tell you that, my personal preference is a little bit nerdier than most. So when I'm doing this, I'm showing 4 different products. You can show as little or as much as you want. In fact, I've seen probably the more successful presentations when you're looking at a cost of waiting are going to be comparing the cost of buying now versus a worst case, which means the price went up, the rates went up, they waited too long and now they're kind of SOL, right? So I like developing all the scenarios in between there though. So my cost of waiting scenario looks like a buy now, and then I'm going to do wait for drop. I'll use the copy button. I'm going to copy that buy now option, and I'm going to assume they waited for a couple of months. They actually got the price drop that they were looking for. But because they waited a couple of months, rates went up. And then I'm going to add another product. I'm going to call this one no drop. I'll copy my initial one. So the price didn't drop, but rates went up. They waited too long. And then for my 4th product, this one's going to be worst case. I'll copy my buy now product and I'll increase the price. So price actually went up, and in that time they waited, so did rates. Now you're going to find this is kind of cool when you get into the preview of this. The cost of waiting presentation, if you do it correctly, you should see this. Oops, there we go. Take off that old video. You should see a really cool cascading effect going on if you do all these products like I just did. So we've got a buy now, which obviously delivers the most savings. And then as we go forward, obviously the worst case, there's no savings on there. Everything is benchmarked against it. Now, this makes sense. However, what probably makes more sense for me to do is to go into the analysis screen and then change my benchmarks. So instead of defaulting against the highest payment, let's show them the pain of waiting. And I'll do that for both of them. Now I'm going to show them exactly how much it's going to cost them to wait. So instead of it'll save you $146 to buy right now, it's going to cost you an extra $146 if you wait for a couple of months and prices and rates go up. I did the same thing on the long-term schedule, or on the short, our midterm schedule, so we can see what that looks like. But over the 60-month period of time, it's going to cost you $9,000 if you continue to wait. So I mean, you guys saw how easy I put that together, right? I mean, it was just a single product, and then I just used the copy button and altered very minor things about each one of these. Put that together in about 30 seconds. I would highly advise you have one of these in your repertoire. Even if it's a sample report like I just did here, have it in your Edge presentations. Generate that link and then store this somewhere so you know where to find it. So this link in particular, I'd probably email this to myself. just so I know that I can deliver this to my realtor partners. But then when I'm making that first contact with the realtor partner, I'm going to have this cost of waiting ready to go. And this is the first link I'm going to send them. I'm going to have them click on it. I'm going to have them download the mobile app, and I'm going to have them run through the presentation so I can show them what it looks like. Then I'm also going to have a sample refinance transaction. I'm going to have a sample different purchase price transaction. I'm going to have probably 3 or 4 different presentations because I really do want to show this realtor what type of service I can offer to our mutual clients. And obviously, the purchase process is very important to the realtor, but as a value proposition, I'm more valuable as a mortgage resource if I continue to follow up with my client. We're not just closing a purchase transaction and getting out of Dodge. We're closing a purchase transaction and we're the trusted mortgage advisor. So we're going to continue watching their mortgage. And every year, we're going to do an annual mortgage review. So there's another one you might want to have for your realtor partners. Show what the annual mortgage review looks like. Um, of course, anytime you're working with a realtor partner, you want to show them the open house presentation. That's definitely one because it's going to have their branding on it. That's going to be the light bulb that turns everything on for them and says, oh, wow, you're cross-selling me. Oh, okay. This makes more sense to me now. I can see my branding. I can see everything that's going on. And then the question is, well, why aren't your total cost analyses co-branded? Well, for compliance, I can't co-brand those. I'm representing rates and terms that I'm representing as a lender. But if you check out the video that I attached, I talked about our relationship during the video. So keep that in mind, guys, when you're recording your videos and you know your realtor partner is going to be viewing it. Even if you don't know, honestly, if you're working with a realtor partner on a transaction, the best thing you can do to increase your referrals is cross-sell that realtor partner at every step you possibly can. Even if it's your initial presentation of the borrower, and if the realtor has referred you to this borrower, that borrower knows the realtor partner. So not only are you legitimizing yourself by cross-selling to that realtor partner, but you're continuing to build that relationship. So I'm sorry, David, I know I went down a long road there, but here's what I recommend. So you're right, open house, definitely want to have an open house because now you've got the co-branding. Make sure to record a sample video on there to talk about your relationship with the realtor partner, the kind of financing options you can provide, maybe even a case study about how you helped a homeowner achieve the American dream by getting into a property using some creative financing. Those kind of things work great. So, open house flyer, I would show them a cost of waiting. I would show them a rent versus own because these are things that are going to be definitely useful for their buyers. I would show the annual mortgage review because the annual mortgage review is going to be your follow-up protocol. This is how I work with our borrowers going forward. So not only during the purchase process, but as we continue going forward, I'm going to look out for their mortgage. If there's a better rate next year, I'm going to send them a proposal on that and see if it's something that might work for them. And either way, I'm going to send them a proposal. If rates go up and it's not the right time to refi, I'm still going to send them that proposal because it further reiterates that I closed the right loan with them, and I'm still looking out for them. And while now is not the right time to refinance, I'm giving you the information on what the market looks like, and you can expect this every year from me. So now you're building that rapport from the beginning, and you're just jumping off the springboard of the realtor to do it. So very easy way to get yourself into that pattern. But this also it brings up another point in that you have to be diligent about this. You obviously don't want to make promises on your value prop that you can't complete. So earmark some time to do your annual mortgage reviews. Maybe it's once a month that you do these, but you go through your past closed loans, you earmark the presentations that you need to create, and then you set aside a day. Maybe you set aside a couple of hours a day for a week to do your annual mortgage review and get these out to your clients. And make sure to put a video on there. Do not send these out without a video. The worst thing that you can have happen as an originator is for your advice to be misconstrued. The easiest way for you to get around that is make sure there's a video on it. That way, whether it's a purchase transaction or a refi transaction, when that presentation is being shared with other people who make decisions in the process, your advice is going to carry through with it. So thanks, everybody. I know I went a little over. David, great question, man. Awesome. Make sure and come back next week. I'd love to field more questions from you. Taffy, thank you very much for the commentary. This will be in the help area to look at later today. For those of you who don't know how to go and review the presentations that we've done like this, just hit help inside your Edge presentation here, and this will take you over to our support center. And then our coaching call archive is where all the recordings are stored. So hit access coaching call archive, and you can see that so far in August, we've only had the Tuesday sales call, and that was with Ken De Leon. Great call, by the way. If you haven't had a chance to watch this, make sure to check this one out. This is all about realtor presentation. So David, this kind of right up the alley with the line you were asking about, but this is how you can hear it directly from America's Best Realtor. So good call. Make sure to watch it. But as you can see here, we do load all of our Thursday training calls in here, so you can certainly view this one. Great, David, you saw it. Awesome. But yeah, you can certainly view this one. We'll have it up by the end of the day. And I say end of the day, but I'll have it up there in a couple hours. But with that said, I'm going to go ahead and close out the call for today. Thanks to everybody for the great interaction. And certainly, if you run into a problem, you're running into an issue, whether it's closing costs like we discussed today, or maybe you just can't get your fees to match, maybe you're not understanding, where certain parts of the analysis are coming from, we're here for you. Our support team is honestly the best in the industry. So when you email our support team, we will get back to you within 30 minutes during business hours, and we will provide you with an answer. So while you could potentially call in and wait on hold to talk to somebody who's going to try and sell you something, I would tell you, stay off the phone, send us an email, get it to our experts. Our experts will be able to help you. They can even look into the presentation that you're doing, view the data entry, and find the areas that might have made a mistake and make recommendations to fix it. So take advantage of them. They're really good. I'm really proud of them. But beyond that, I would tell you that we've got ex originators, ex underwriters, ex processors working our support team. They are so well versed in how loans work, how current guidelines work, and how our software works. You just can't go wrong. So start with support. It's the best place to go. But with that said, everybody, I will have this uploaded within a couple hours here. I'll let you go for today. Thank you very much for joining us and for sticking around for the call. And I see a lot of names in here that I've seen before. Taffy, I know you're on every call for the last couple of weeks. Thank you so much for joining us. I really do appreciate you being on here. Huge shout out for the dedication there. And I can't wait to see great things coming out of your presentations. David, great questions. Mark, thanks for your questions as well. Gabriel, thanks for starting it off. And Dave Manaville, man, I haven't seen you in here in a long time. Thanks for joining us. But for all of you who are in here, make sure to join us every week for these. If you haven't seen it, we changed our schedule up just a little bit. If you go into your knowledge base and access the month's event calendar, you'll notice that the intro session, if you've never done this before, it used to be on Fridays. Starting in August, we're doing this on Mondays. So Monday is the intro session. Tuesday is Dave's sales training call with industry guests. Wednesday is mobile mentality. That's the one we did yesterday. And then Thursday is today's call that we're doing right now. Friday is everybody's days off. So we're not gonna do any training, with the exception of our Mortgage Coach University, which runs every day of the month for the first 3 weeks of every month. There's different topics that we cover in each one of these sessions. If you wanted to see the curriculum so you can decide what you want to view, you can always come in here and see exactly where we're at. So you can see what's covered in the 101 course in the morning and then what's covered in the afternoon. So determine what calls you'd like to join and certainly earmark them on your schedule. Our experts will be there to help you understand these concepts and answer any questions that you have. Oh, Rick, you're on here too. Thanks, Rick, for joining us. And thanks, everybody. I do appreciate you being on here. And certainly, I know I don't get to do these calls often enough, so I don't get to see you as often as I used to. But I love interacting with you guys. So thanks very much for your time, everybody. And have a wonderful day. I'll have this recording up in a couple hours. Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.